Hi there, I wanted to create a video on how to UV unwrap using Pelt and Relax in Max 2012. Let's get started here. I'm going to hide these background images. And we've got 4 objects in the scene here, kind of representative of multiple objects. A common misconception is that you have to UV unwrap these one at a time and then maybe attach all these parts together. You don't have to do that. We can select all these at once, apply the Unwrap UVW modifier. Notice how it's italicized. That means it's applied to more than one object. You can see that listed up here, 4 objects selected. Let's go to the editor, and I just want to organize this rat's nest here. I will select by element, face, and now I can select the glove, the shirt, pants, shoe. If I did that over here, I could get the glove, but look, I'm missing some pieces based on the way I built it. And if I do it over in the viewport, I get the whole thing. If I'm over here, look, I only get half the pants. So, in my opinion, it's faster to be over here. Just grab the whole thing. Let's press quick planar map. That organizes it. One quick note here, see that orange or yellow box around these pants? If I want maybe a front view, let's change that to that. See the box now? I press quick planar map, and that gives me a different view entirely. This normal sticking out of that box is an indication of which side we're looking at, and that's the front. Let's grab the shoe. How about a side view? Glove, got a side view there. And then a front view of the shirt. Okay, so here's the shells I want to unwrap, and I'm just kind of putting them to the left here, knowing that they're going to go into the 0-1 space. I'm going to unwrap them, and once there's no distortion on these UVs, I'll scoot them over to the right. This is my workflow. It allows me to work pretty quickly. So let's get going here. I'm going to select this shirt first, and the strategy I use for unwrapping clothes is I like to unwrap them similarly to the way they were manufactured. So I know that there's a seam on the side here, and there's often a seam up here. And so if I put a seam here, and then one here and one here, that gives me 2 different pieces. I can unwrap the front, make it distortion free, and I can unwrap the back and make it distortion free, and there won't be tension because it's all one piece. So it's easier to remove the bits that are going to complicate matters, and this internal cap is certainly going to complicate matters. So I'm just going to grab these faces, and if I just press the Pelt button here, that gets them separated from the remaining. I hit commit, but it didn't unwrap because I need an internal cut here for that thing to smooth out. So I'll just go to point here, put in a seam. It's hard to see that seam because I've got render on. Now you can see that blue seam. I'm toggling F3 and F2. Now I go hit Pelt, and because I gave it that cut, I start Pelt, it stretches out, and I hit commit. If I don't like the fact that it butted up against the edge of the stretcher, I can go into Pelt options, select stretcher, scale that stretcher out, and then hit start Pelt again, and it has more space. Now I can go to tools, relax, by face angles, and it's completely distortion free. So that's about done. Just scoot that out of the way. Let's orient that a little bit more reasonably and scale it down. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and quickly do the same thing to this side, and then let's get rid of this internal trim here. Give me a second to do that. Okay, so I have unwrapped this piece right here, that inner cap, this piece right here, and then I peeled off this internal trim, but I think that's going to be an error. I don't think I want to do that, and the reason why is because I've got this unwieldy long strip that is, I'm going to have to scrunch this down, scale this down to a tiny degree. I'm not going to get the texture resolution that I want. Perhaps it would be smarter to keep that intact on these polygons and then just spread it out, a little bit of hand manipulation in the end. Another solution would be to fold these UVs back on themselves, but then that's going to ruin the ambient occlusion, and I don't want that. I want to make sure that the textures I paint have nice clean UVs. So let's not stack UV shells on top of each other for next gen applications. Okay, so next step, let's finish the shirt here. I applied this checkerboard just to see what is finished and what's not. You can see a lot of stretching right in here, stretching right here. If I grab this shell and we kind of look at the squares, you can see there's very little stretching. Same thing on the other side. That's kind of my own personal method for seeing if there is any stretching or distortion going on in these UVs. A little while later in this video I'll show how to apply a different texture map that gives a little bit more visual information. Okay, so onto the shirt here. I'm going to go to point, put a seam right down the side. Let's make sure I get any bottom polygon. I don't want to leave that out. And make sure that I get this little polygon in here. Yeah, I got that. Let's put a seam up the top, right around there. Let's get that internal one. And let's do the same thing for the other side. And I want to be consistent on where I place these seams, meaning I want to make sure that I grab the same edge here as I do over here. So I'll just go right across there. If I hit F3, I can see the blue line. And let's make sure I get this internal one. And then we need this one over here. Sometimes it's hard to tell if it worked or not. There, I can see the blue line goes in. And let's get that bottom one. Alright, so I've got seams. Now if I grab this whole shell, turn off point to point, grab the shell, I'm going to come over here and hold the Alt button down and deselect those. I don't want to fool with those anymore. I'm going to deliberately leave this in because I want to get that back into the mix. If I was unhappy with how these came out, I would just leave them in, go to Pelt, and they would get re-unwrapped using the Pelt process. But I don't want to do that. I want to leave those. So now I hit Pelt, start Pelt, and commit. And it chose one of the shells. Because I put these seams in here, 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 and here, the software chose which remaining shell. In this case, it was the back. That does that one. Let's just grab the front, and it leaves this interior piece, which is some UVs I had unresolved. So this is actually a pretty useful way to make sure that you haven't modeled it poorly. I need to just, here's the interior. So I'll come back and I'll attach those at a future date. Right now I've got this front and the back. I'll just grab the front, I'll hit Pelt, start Pelt, commit, and then go to Tools, Relax, and do it by face angles. Okay, so the distortion is coming out completely. And let's rotate that horizontally, scoot that down a little bit. You can see the squares, there's next to no distortion whatsoever. Let's scale this down a little bit to make those squares a little bit larger. It's looking really good. So I'm done with this piece. I'll scoot that over here. Let's grab the back. Hit Pelt, start Pelt, and commit. And then by face angles, no distortion there. Scale this down, and I'm looking to make the squares here the exact same size as the squares on the front. I want my texture resolution to be the same. So I'll scoot those next to each other, scale that down approximately like that. I'm just eyeballing these squares and coming around. Looks like these are a little bit smaller than these, so right around there. Okay, let's grab these two shells, make the texture resolution roughly the same, and then that leaves these bits. Okay, I'll grab this one. This is the internal piece, and it's not important that I spend a lot of texture resolution on that, so I'll just pelt that, commit, and then see what happens when I relax it. There, it's real simple. I'm done with that, and I'm going to scale that down quite small because I don't want to spend a lot of texture space on that. Something like that. Park that someplace innocuous. And now, what about this trim piece? What am I going to do with that? Well, here's a quick way if you don't really want to wreck what you've unwrapped up here. I'm just going to grab the polygons that come with this part. Okay, so those are the ones associated with the back, and I'll just hit Quick Planar Map. There they are. Put them up there, and then let's grab the remainder, which are associated with the front. Hit Quick Planar Map. Put those there. Let's just do some target welding. I'll make this a little bit larger. Go to Vertice, and I can close that for now. Let's go Tools, Target Weld, and when I select a vertice, it's going to highlight somewhere on here where it goes to. So if I grab this one, it goes there, and I know that its opposite is roughly somewhere around there. Let's just dump these on there. Look, that goes over there. There's a faster way to do this using Stitch, but I just thought it might be useful to show how to troubleshoot some of this stuff. Okay, so I fixed that side. Let me target weld this. And then let's just park these where they need to be. Now, you might be asking yourself, man, those UVs for that trim piece are quite large. If we were to come in here, just grab these faces, go to Tools, Relax, by Face. There, it fixed it. All done. Let's do the same thing over here. Back to Vertice, make sure Target Weld is on. If you're having a hard time seeing the connections, like if I grab this vertice here and you can't see the blue dot, let's go up here to Display, Show Vertex Connections, and now check it out. I grab here and number 68 is telling me it goes right there. When I grab one of this vertice right here, 289, well, that's over here. So it's it gives you kind of a little bit of visual feedback on what goes where. I'll grab these and scoot them down closer. back to target weld. Okay, I'm going to finish this. I don't think you need to watch that. Okay, I put them all in place, but there's still some distortion in those. So let's just grab these polys, relax it. There, perfect. Okay, so I've got the shirt done. There it is. I'll just move that over here to kind of tell myself that it's finished and doesn't need to be fooled with anymore. Let me go and do the pants. Now the pants are no different than the shirt. Just have to be smart about where we put the seams. I want these pants to be split into two pieces and unwrapped just in two shells. And then, just like I have in the shirt here, I've got these caps on the inside. I'll strip out those caps separately, and that'll leave me with two shells. So go ahead and follow along, and then it'll be like a cooking show where I stop at some point, finish the job, so I'm not boring you to tears. Okay, so here's this guy. Let me remove these caps really quick. Okay, I want to make sure that I didn't accidentally pick up some vertice by accident. Yeah, that one right there. Some polygon by accident. And then hit quick planar map. That strips it out. But I don't want to hit pelt yet because I need to add in a seam. So I'll go point to point, tell it to cut it right there, and then we'll pelt it. And now it unwraps. So we can say commit. It's a really simple object. We don't have to expand the stretcher on that. Go relax, face angles. Okay, so that's done. Let me fast forward and do the other side. Okay, got these two little pieces done. I want to put a seam right down the middle here. And this is a good choice because the zipper is right there in the middle. And pants are often seamed this way, so we can hide any sort of anomaly. Oops. Let's grab that. Still got my point. There, the blue line runs all the way there. So how is this going to unwrap? Right now it won't. It'll just go into two kind of messy blobs. Watch what happens when I press pelt on this. It selects one side, start, commit, and leaves the other. We haven't given it enough information yet. So let's go back to point, and maybe from here all the way up to there. You see that blue line. Okay, now we try pelt, start, and see how cleanly it comes out? That's a great sign that all will be well. Now let's do relax. There you have it. Left leg is done. Let me orient that correctly. Scoot it out of the way. Oops. Let's grab the right leg, and let's make sure the seam goes in the exact same spot. That is right here, up to here, there. Let's go pelt, start, commit, relax. Okay, both legs are done. If you know which buttons to push and you have an understanding of how this process works, this is, I know, a controversial statement, but you can actually move a lot faster than some of these third-party tools like UVLayout. And, you know, for those naysayers out there that are like, oh, no, you can't. Well, just watch what happens when I do something like the hand. Because one thing that these third-party tools don't do, UV Master and ZBrush or UVLayout, is they don't make the hard decisions for you where these seams go. You still have to go in there and paint these seams and tell the software what to do. And that's kind of the bottleneck. So if I can make this process very fast in this UV editor, then, you know, I'm not saying UVLayout or UV Master is wrong. I'm just saying that, you know, they're about the same. All right, so let me just kind of select that, hit F3, and let's look at our squares. Texture resolution is roughly the same. We don't have a glaring seam on the outside because the seam is on the inside, and that's okay because that's where the inseam is on pants goes when they make these things. So those are done. Let's do the hand so you can see an example of a complex object being UV unwrapped quite quickly. Now, the trick is telling the software where you want the seam to go. And you can't really do it if you haven't modeled it well. If you have a squirrely model, then no amount of UV magic is going to make this easy. So I'm going to go point to point. The idea is I'm going to run these seams this way. Let's get the fingertip in there. And I'm probably boring you to tears, so let me just finish this seam selection here. Take me about another 60 seconds. Okay, so here is the seam. I ran it on this side, down the thumb, through the web, around the fingers, and then back to the other side. The idea is to have an upper half of the hand and the lower half of the hand, two shells. Okay, so let's just press Pelt, start, it'll pick one of the other, commit. Now, look what happened. It gave me one shell with some problems in it. So that's telling me that I missed a seam somewhere. Where could it be? I forgot to do these right here and then right here. So let's go back to point, grab that, and let's go down this cap. And now try Pelt, start, commit. So it's still hung up somewhere. Let's troubleshoot this. I'm going to grab all these polys here and then just press the grow button until I get to where I'm guessing this seam might be. Okay, so there's that selection. I'll just press quick planar map. That stripped it off. I can then pelt it. There's the inside. Grab this part, or rather this shell. Quick planar map it. And then pelt it. There's that shell. So both of them need to be relaxed. So there's the outer one. And there's the inner one. I'm going to grab both of those at the same time and press relax. And there it goes. I've got a little bit of manual cleanup to do on the insides of the fingers. Just let that cook a little bit more. And let's zoom in. So we don't want this overlap here. So I need to go to vertice. Let's turn off my show display. I want to grab this vert and make sure that they're not overlapped. I am distorting the UVs. I'm living with the distortion I just incorporated. But that's the lesser of two evils than having these things overlap. Our ambient occlusion and our normal will be ruined if we, not ruined, but there'll be an error if we live with this overlap. So that's finished right there. Let's go look at the other side. Let's rotate that and then go to vertex. Yeah, there's no overlap on the inside because it's a less complex shape. One last relax. It's just scaling, and I ruined what I did there. So I'm going to undo that. Call it good. Rotate that. Okay, so that's done. I'm just going to fast forward and I'll show you how I unwrap this boot. Okay, so here's the shoe unwrapped, and the strategy I used was to just grab the upper, all this upper here. I put a seam in the back, leaving the top part completely untouched by any seams, and so it's highly unlikely that we're going to be seeing this very much. So that's the advantage of that. And then this piece is a separate UV shell, again with the seam in the back. And then the third piece is the sole. And by having these two separate shells, that allows me to have a really crisp delineation between this material and this material. This is going to be leather and this is going to be like hard rubber. And I'm able to have a much crisper line by separating the UV shell rather than being forced to hand paint in low poly that line. That's an advantage. So here are the three shells, and now all four objects are completely UV. Now this is really kind of the meat and potatoes of this video. It's one thing to know how to pelt and relax. It's quite another to know how to pack these inside of a 0-1 space. We want to be really certain that we don't overspend on some objects and underspend on others. For example, look at the size of these gloves. We don't want to spend all that texture resolution on these gloves and have them be this size, taking up the entire sheet. So obviously those have to come down quite a bit. And then the pants and the shirt take up significant chunks of visual space, and so let's scoot those over maybe a little bit smaller. This is where experience just kind of lets you know what's going to work and what's not. So I'll put the pants right there. I'll put the shirt right about there. That's still a little crooked. Let's tuck that in a little closer. A word about padding. Padding is the distance in pixels between one shell to the next, or rather this perimeter. How many pixels over am I going to bleed in my render to texture or my ambient occlusion? So need to be careful about that. Looks like this needs to be welded. I must not have welded those a second ago. Let's get the hands in here. Those can go a little bit bigger. And why don't I rotate those 90? I'm going to go there. Let's make it a little bit larger. Scoot that next to it. Okay, we've got the shoe to fit in. Instead of having that right there, let's rotate that around. It's important not to overlook the bottom of the foot, because if you're doing a walk or a run, you actually do see the bottom of the foot quite a bit. So don't overlook that. And I'm just kind of looking around for a decent place to put this without losing it These things are not so visible. They don't need a lot of texture space. That's fine for now. So, I'm going to continue on with this model, and it might come to pass that I have some more parts in here. That means I need to select all this stuff and scale it down, scoot it over, and just play this game of jigsaw. Get it all inside the 0, 1 space. This is 0, 0, and this is 0, 1. That's why I call it the 0, 1 space. But the idea is to utilize as much of this space as we possibly can so that we're not having the computer draw unutilized texture space in our video games. Okay, hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to post on YouTube, and I'll try to respond as fast as I can. Thanks.